Sir, we'll start now, sir.
Yes, Mr. Harishan.
Okay. Dear participants and respected dear manager, very good afternoon and welcome you all for session number 13 on developing leadership style. And this session will be delivered by Mr. P.N. Nair, Chief Operating Officer, Deshpande Skilling, India. A hearty welcome to you, sir, on behalf of Government Polytechnic Kathmandu. On behalf of all my staff and principal, and on behalf of all the participants, I extend a warm welcome to you, sir. Dear participants, before we proceed further, we would like to introduce the resource person to you. Mr. Nair is an experienced professional with over 30 years of varied experience in the corporate world and social development sector. He is currently Operating Officer of Deshpande Skilling, responsible for achieving impact by mobilizing, skilling, and placing delivery. He has headed the talent development function for a leading Indian IT product, services, and system integration organization for 15 years. The organization had a people count of 15,000 plus and largely was made up of profiles in business management, IT system integration, and solution sales, IT product sales, IT product distribution, and IT technical services. In addition to this, he was part of the management council of the company. Own the program for hiring technical graduates, spotting outstanding talent in the executive cadre, who won the company's annual program for development, assessment, and selection of personnel to move from one band of the organization's hierarchy to the next. Have a wide understanding of technologies like computing, communication, storage, and security. Have worked in all these areas for 27 years as a service engineer, service manager, sales manager, and training manager. He had delivered technical training for management and sales profiles. He had delivered training for young managers on customer management, people management, business management, understanding finance and business, and managing accountability. Accountability. Sir, thank you for accepting our invitation, and the session is over to you, sir.
So yeah, thank you, Harisha. Thank you for that very kind introduction. So yeah, I'm today part of Deshpande Skilling, and I'm very glad that I'm talking to an audience which has people who have decided to take up teaching as their profession. So I've always had very healthy respect for people in this profession. Personally, I have quite a few role models in my own personal life who came from among my teachers at school and from my college. And let me tell you all that you will never know what kind of influence you will be having on people and how big that impact could be on a lot of people just by what you're doing in your profession. So first of all, my heartfelt gratitude to all of you for choosing to be a teacher and creating the next generation of what this country will become. Yeah, so before I start the session on leadership styles or whatever, I would like to use this opportunity to share something about the organization that I work for. So yeah, I'm part of the Deshpande Foundation. Many of you would have heard my CEO also speak on the first day of the series. We are a not-for-profit organization. So DB, I would request you to put up that slide. DB, I will request you to put up the slide. So yeah, DB is my colleague who is assisting me with this. So DB, I'll request you to put up the slide. Yeah, just give us a moment. Uh,
Nice, it is visible.
no, it's not visible, DB. It was visible, then you said stop sharing, so please share it again.
Yes, nice.
So yeah, talking about the organization that I'm working for, Deshpande Foundation is a not-for-profit working for rural transformation. We are based out of Hubli, and the objective of what my foundation is doing is to create impact for people at the bottom of the pyramid. So we work with farmers, we work with rural youth, we work at village schools. So we run multiple programs. This is a philanthropic project of Mr. Gururaj Deshpande, who happens to be from north part of Karnataka, who's a very successful entrepreneur in the US, and this is his way of giving back. So we run programs for rural youth who have completed their BA, BSc, BCom, B.Ed, BBA, diploma, ITI. It's a 3 to 4 month program that we run at our center in Hubli. We also run some of these programs at the colleges. And the good thing is we have a good network with employers. So we understand what exactly they are looking for. And therefore, we are able to do the finishing for the students, fresh graduates who pass out of college. And we have been able to achieve 85 to 90% placement of candidates who have gone through our program. And all selections for this program are from the tier 2, tier 3 cities, towns, colleges there. So the program is targeted towards achieving the foundation's goal of rural transformation. So I'll just share a few images of our skilling center here in Hubli, just to share with you. Uh, so next slide, DB. DB can hold that. Yeah. So yeah, I'll move straight away to the presentation. I would like to start with a short video on leadership. So DB, if you can play that video for all of us.
Yes, nice. One minute, nice. Just ಇಲ್ಲ ಅದು ಅಲ್ಲೊಂದು ನೋಡ್ತೀನಿ
Yeah, sorry, the audio I think is not going through the VC channel. There is music behind this that's not audible. No. It's okay, DB. We'll go to the presentation. So we're all learning to use the online platform. So move to the next slide, DB. Yeah. So yeah, the topic that I've been asked to speak on is leadership and leadership styles. So I would like to pick something that in my personal life as a young manager who was heading quite large teams, something that I was trained on and I found to be very, very useful. I would like to share that framework. It's quite simple. Very, very pragmatic, very practical, and I'm sure those of you who are possibly aware of it, it would be a repetition or refresh for you. But for if somebody it is first time, I'm sure you will find it very, very easy to do in your position as leader in whatever you're doing. So DB, can we move to the next slide? Next slide. So we'll start with, let me understand from all of you, how would you define leadership? So I'd like to get some responses. What do you think is leadership? I know it's a very trivial question, but if we can hear from you, there are a lot of cues on this screen. So I'd just like to hear from you as well, if it could come in the chat. What do you think is leadership? So thinking positive all the time, guiding people, inspiring others to follow your vision. Yeah, it's about giving respect. Exactly, it's about taking initiatives, having vision for the team, for the organization. Yeah, it is. Leaders need to have trust with their teams. Initiatives, I'm seeing that multiple times. Leaders have to drive change. Yeah, taking to places which seemed impossible or nobody thought of it. Exactly, it's not really about having followers. You don't create followers. Followers happen as a process. Lakshmi, yes, you must have belief in oneself, taking ownership. So yes, there are a lot of things. You can see those cues on the screen. Leadership is first of all about having a vision, having a dream, having a vision on where you want to take the team to, where you want to take the organization to, have very aspirational goals for the team. You have to communicate well. As leaders, we need to communicate well to team members, to our ecosystem, that this is what we want to achieve and we think we can achieve this. A successful leader is somebody who can transfer his passion for what he thinks is possible and what he wants to do. If he can communicate and transfer it to his team members, if he can make his mission and vision the vision and mission of his team members too, that's when leadership sees success. So for a leader, key thing first of all is having a vision, have belief in that vision, communicate well, and do it so well that your team also believes that it is their vision and mission and not just your vision mission. So I think all these are key things for a leader. And beyond that, we as leaders need to be able to influence. We need to influence the ecosystem because things will not just happen like that. If we are taking up something major, then we need to influence the ecosystem for things to happen. That is the big role of any leader. And make sure that the team handles it. Building great team is another key part of a leader. He needs to identify people in his team. He needs to make sure that they are doing the right tasks which they can deliver well. Right horses for the right courses, horses for courses. So that's what is the role of a leader. So you can see a lot of things on this one slide, which is what a leader needs to possess to be a good leader. While all this is true, something that I have learned personally is while all this is leadership, there is something else which is very, very crucial. So DB, if you can move to the next slide. So I think leadership is, first of all, a decision. It is a decision. It's an attitude. It's a mindset that I can lead. I want to lead. I can make a difference. I want to achieve. So first of all, I think leadership is a decision before anything else. Because with leadership comes a lot of responsibility. We become answerable to a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders around us. We have to take ownership. There is going to be time pressure. There are going to be pressures all around because we are answerable and a lot of people are watching us. So yeah, as leaders, what we should be ready for is that we are going to be scrutinized. People around us are going to be watching. So all these are things that we should take in our stride. If somebody is not ready for this, if somebody doesn't have the courage for this and is looking at leadership just as a privilege or a position or the power that comes along with it, then it's not going to work. So personally, I have experienced this, is that leadership is first a decision. Only then can you succeed. Why am I saying this? Is in my personal experience when I was in my early, rather late 20s, and I was being considered to become a leader, to lead a team. Till then, I was an individual contributor. I'm an engineer by qualification. So I used to be good at what I'm doing. I was very passionate about solving problems, about technical things, about being on the cutting edge of technology. So all these things were my passion. And all of a sudden, my organization says that I may have to start now heading a team and start being the engineer, stop being the engineer and start heading a team. My first reaction was, no, I don't want to do it. I wanted to continue to be an engineer. I didn't want to get into a managerial role. So if somebody is reluctant, a reluctant leader is not going to work. So you must have belief that you can do this. So the first thing that my managers at that time did was to convince me that I can lead. So it was only after that I made a decision that I realized that I can contribute more, I can do better as a leader than just as an individual. So I strongly believe that leadership is first a decision. It is in the mind. If somebody is not willing to accept this, then leadership just becomes a position. They are not going to play that role. They are not going to be leaders. They could become managers. They could become all the positions that go with a manager. But unless we accept leadership as a role and have that passion that I want to make a change, I want to create that impact, till that happens, we are not going to be leaders. So this is my firm belief that while all the things that were there in the previous slide is true, leadership is first a decision. It is in our mind. Our mind has to accept that I'm going to lead. Only then will we become real leaders. So yeah, next slide, DB. So yeah, this is the reluctant leader who's being pushed into leadership versus somebody who has that attitude that I want to be a leader. So I want all of us here in this group who are in this leadership position just ponder about it. Are we a reluctant leader or are we this willing leader? So I just want you to think about it for yourself. And if you want to share, most welcome. Is it that you wanted this to be not as a position? So let me be very, very clear. Leadership not as a position, but leadership as a tool by which you can do more, by which you can achieve bigger things. So I would like people here to share your thoughts. Do you really think those of you people probably who are heading departments or heading colleges, were you a reluctant leader or you are a willing leader? So if you could get a few responses, we could use that. So yeah, Meenakshi Sundari and Dr. Usha Raju, willing leaders. Yeah, that's good to know, because there are many times when the organization's process pushes people into leadership positions while they are not really willing to be leaders. So those would be reluctant leaders. Yeah, we see reluctant leaders all around us, and then how the problem that they face, not just for themselves, but also for their teams. If a leader does not perform, then the whole team fails to perform. So let's move to the next, DB. So yeah, when it comes to leadership, it is layered. Honestly, I believe that this is how it is. It is layered. To be a good leader, we need to be first good at leading self. Individually, we need to be good leaders, disciplined. A lot of things goes into leading self. Belief, vision. For myself, I need to have a goal for myself. I need to have belief in myself. I need to be willing. The previous slide where we said willing leader, it starts with leading self. People are observing us. So if I don't walk the talk and I'm just a preacher, then it's not going to work. So leading self is important. And beyond that comes, as a leader, we are as good as our teams. Let me repeat this. Any leader is as good as his team. A leader can create great teams, but finally he's as good as his team. Or a leader can actually start looking extraordinarily great if he has a great team. Okay, somebody who's probably an average person would look extraordinary when he succeeds in creating a great team. Then beyond that is the leader should break the status quo. In many situations, the world is changing. We always keep hearing that the only constant in this world is change. So leaders, if they are the status quo leaders, then that team will perish. Very, very clear, because the world is changing. It's a competitive world. Things are changing. If we are in the status quo mode, then it's a matter of time before the team perishes. So very important for the team leaders or leadership in any organization also to be in line with the ecosystem, what is happening around, what's happening in competition, what is expected by the stakeholders, and drive that change. Change is not easy. So leaders need to be strong to drive change. Leaders need to believe in that change to be able to drive change. Leaders need to communicate strongly within the team that change is important, that change will benefit, we will be better after implementing this change. So driving change is a key layer of another layer of leadership. And then finally comes leading an organization, leading an institution. So that's when the role of a leader is more strategic. They need to be able to influence the society. They need to be able to influence other players in the ecosystem. They need to be able to influence policy. Great leaders will be good at that. They are not just internal looking. When they are leading organizations, leaders just cannot be internal looking. The department leaders could be very internal, but as somebody who's heading an organization, leaders who are heading organizations, they need to spend considerable amount of time, I would say more time on the outside world than on the inside world, because for any team, for any organization to succeed, the ecosystem is so critical. We are finally working with stakeholders. So if we are talking of a CEO of an organization, what the customers think, what the employees think, that's the internal part, what the other shareholders or owners of the company, what do they think, what are their expectations. Meeting all this becomes the key part of somebody who's at that CXO role. So leadership is layered, leading self, leading others, leading change, leading organization. While each of these require different competencies. Like I mentioned, leading organization, the person must have the ability to influence people who is not familiar with. They are talking to the outside world. People need to look at the outside world and be able to communicate with the government. We need to be able to communicate with industry bodies, or in the case of colleges, I'm sure there are organizations which represent multiple colleges. The policies are decided there. So leaders need to be able to do all that. But in today's session, in the given time, I thought I will pick leading others, which is leading teams. It's a very critical component of any good leader, is leading others, creating great teams. Because like I mentioned, any leader is only as good as his team. So leading others is a very critical component. So I have decided that in this session, I will focus more on leading others. All the other three are also important, but in this 1 hour, we will spend time on leading others. So yeah, DB, if you can move to next. So one more thing, people can express your thoughts, your opinions on what I'm sharing online. We don't need to wait till the end. It is better if it is interactive. In the virtual space, creating that interaction is a little difficult than in the physical space, but we will still try. So if people have some opinions on what I'm sharing, either you agree with me or disagree with me, we can talk about it. We can discuss it here. That's the reason why we are all here, to become better. Believe me, I could leave from this session learning something new. So yeah, leader is a pioneer, Mr. Riker. He has to think new ways of doing things. That's what we call cutting edge. So organizations or institutions which are thinking of ways which nobody else has thought before, they become the leaders in whichever space or in whichever sector they are. And all that has to be driven by leaders. If you look at any of the best organizations in the world, they are in that position because somebody within that organization said there is a new way of doing things which nobody has done it before. Risk taking is another component of leadership. Ability to say, yeah, I think it makes sense. It might work, it might not work, but we need to give this a try. We need to take the risk. Yeah, that's another key component of leadership. So yeah, I'm going to focus here on leading others. I'll keep repeating again, a leader is only as good as his team. He might be a great individual contributor. He may be a great an engineer or a great teacher or whatever. Or even in the case of sport, he may be a great batsman or a great bowler. But as a captain of his team, he's only going to be as good as his team. So there have been so many cases where great individual players, great individual contributors failed as leaders. The best example I can think of here is Sachin Tendulkar. He's god of cricket, at least for the fans in India, but he didn't leave a great imprint as a captain. Same is, yeah, I agree, Rahul Dravid too, such a disciplined player. But when we think of captains in India, we'll possibly think of Kapil Dev or Sourav Ganguly or now MSD. So yeah, if you have to pick the best three captains of Indian cricket, we'll probably pick these three. Yeah, each of them has been great. Kapil Dev probably one of the best, but we look at Dravid or Tendulkar as gods. leaders make the first move. Yeah, was a brilliant. Yeah, exactly. He failed as a coach, but he was a great captain. So yeah, I will use cricket as examples. I played cricket in my college days. I will use cricket as example in this. So DB, can we move to the next? So talking of team leadership. Yeah, here I have an example of Sourav Ganguly with all his team members. So we have Sehwag, Dhoni, Tendulkar, Dravid, Lakshman, Yuvraj, Harbhajan Singh, Kumble, MSD, Zahir Khan, Srinath. Now, if you look at this team, it was such a fantastic team which took India right to the top. But if you look at this team, they are all so different characters. If you have to compare, let's say, Rahul Dravid with Yuvraj Singh, they are so different. Rahul Dravid is such a disciplined guy, whereas Yuvraj is this flamboyant guy. If you have to compare, let's say, Kumble and Harbhajan Singh, they are so very different people. But Ganguly, as the captain of this team, had to take along the entire team. Recently, I was watching a small talk by Ganguly where he was sharing about Yuvraj Singh, how talented he was, but how his commitment can sometimes get wavering, and how we had to actually keep an eye on him. He had to actually, when they go on tour, he had to take the help of security guards at the hotel where they stayed to make sure that Yuvraj Singh stayed focused on the game and is not going out all the time. Living life normally and staying connected to the game which is being played. So they are different players, and Ganguly, if he tries to lead all these members using the same style, it's not going to work. I don't know how Ganguly was handling Tendulkar or Dravid, but if you ask me, possibly he didn't have to do much at all, because each one of them, whether it is Dravid or Kumble or Tendulkar, their commitment was so high to the game that I don't think the captain and the entire team here is talented. So there is no dearth of talent in this team. It's just a question of what is their approach to the game. So we have, even in our own teams, we will have people with great talent, with less talent, great commitment, less commitment. So if we try to adopt a leadership style, it's going to fail. All our team members are like 5 fingers on our hand. They are not the same. So very clearly, one size doesn't fit all when it comes to leadership styles. So if you are thinking of saying which is a better leadership style, style A or style B or style C, I would say there is no style which will suit in all situations. So every style has some relevance, but there is no style which would fit everybody. So yeah, if anybody else has to share anything about how Ganguly led this team, what do you think? How did he lead somebody like, let's say, Lakshman? So what did he have to do with Lakshman? Extremely talented. Or for that matter, Virendra Sehwag. He will win matches. Probably he has won most matches that Ganguly won for the country. But he's a big gamble. So, but he works most of the times. But yeah, his style is different. So would it help if Ganguly tells Virendra Sehwag how to bat? Bat slow. Would that work at all? So yeah, Prameya, that's it. So this is the first thing we need to do as team leaders, that there is bound to be diversity in the team. You cannot have a team of all similars. First of all, it won't work, and it's not possible. If you try to build a team of all people like you, then it's not going to work. The great leaders or the best leaders I've seen, they choose teams where their team members complement their strengths. I don't need a duplicate of myself in my team. I can handle that. I need people in my team who can do things which I am not great at. So if I don't have patience, and there are many situations in workplace where we need a lot of patience, I would like to have a deputy who has a lot of patience. Or if I have a lot, if I am too patient and because of which some things go wrong, I would like to have a deputy in my team who's that guy who will rush things through. So it is very important that leaders must pick people who complement their strengths and not necessarily be similar like what they are. So when it comes to leading teams, when you're forming teams, it's very important that we pick members who complement us rather than just be followers and come along with me and they're so similar to me. It doesn't help. We need teams which has all kinds of players, the flamboyant guy, the very patient guy, the desk guy, people who can handle difficult situations, people who are sticklers to rules. They will go exactly as per the rules and guidelines. They will not break it. They are so afraid of going outside the track. So we will need all kinds of people to make a good team. Yeah, I'm sharing this because I was in teams which was typically large teams. But even if it's a small team, it's all the more important that we have team members in our team who complement us. So Divi, if we can move to the next slide. So yeah, one is having team members who are different characters. But then what is also important is that as team leaders who are leading teams, we are talking of ability and commitment of people. So everybody in the team, they come with some ability. They have some competency. Now we can grade that competency. Somebody may be low on competency, medium on competency, high on competency. When it comes to commitment, somebody is really believing or likes what he's doing and is committed to what he's doing and is very passionate about what he's doing. And there could be another person who doesn't like the assignment you have given him. He says, no, this is not what I like to do. I would like to do something else. This is not what I like to do. So there will be situations where people in your team will have varying commitments and varying abilities. But now, if we look at this 4 quadrants here, both of them are high towards the origin and low towards the other end. We have ability on one end, on the x-axis, and we have commitment or enthusiasm on the other axis. So we can categorize actually different people based on their ability and commitment. If somebody's ability is low, but commitment is high, we can call their development level as D1. Now, you might ask me, what is this? How is it that somebody's ability is low or commitment is high? So can anybody here give me an example from your own team or anywhere else where somebody's ability is low, but their commitment is high? I would like to hear from any one of you. You can even put on your audio and speak if that is allowed, or you can put it in the chat. Combination of low ability but high commitment, which we will call as D1 in the development levels. Okay, so your Sumalata are saying that they are committed, but they lack some training. Okay. They lack training in hard work needed. Okay. No, I'm talking of some situation where commitment, ability is not there, but commitment is very high. Yeah, great, Sudha Reddy. Fresh faculty with low ability, but having passion towards teaching. Yeah, that's a great example. You have a young faculty who has come in saying that I want to be a lecturer, but does not have the experience. The commitment, the enthusiasm is there, but 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 ability is missing. Okay, so somebody is fearing.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah. So I could hear. I think, yeah, Dr. Usha Raju. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Can I give my example?
Yeah, please, ma'am. Yeah.
In 2003, my principal assigned me the job of academic in charge, Pusa Institute of Technology.
Okay.
I had absolutely zero knowledge of engineering subjects because I am a chemistry lecturer, and
Okay.
I had no knowledge of engineering subjects, by the way. I
Okay.
accepted it, and till date, I am continued with it, and people are very happy.
So yeah, exactly. I think. But did you take that role reluctantly, or you thought this is a challenge? I should do this. So what was your thought process when that?
It was a challenge. It was a challenge for me, and I had to accept it.
Okay.
I accepted it and
Okay.
continued with until date. So many principles have changed, but my role has not been changed.
Okay, so let me give you an example from my own life of low ability and high commitment. This is not from the workplace. This is from my personal life. Yeah, my daughter was about 6 or 7 year old, and we bought her first bicycle. Now, does she know how to ride a bicycle? No, she doesn't know. But she would wake me up in the morning at 6 o'clock. I am still sleeping. She would wake up. She's not somebody who would wake up, but she would be up. Daddy, wake up. We have to go. I have to learn to ride a bicycle. When I come back in the evening from work, she would be waiting at the gate with the bicycle. Go freshen up. I have to learn to bicycle. So the ability is not there. She doesn't know how to ride a bicycle. But the commitment to learning to ride the bicycle and to ride the bicycle is so high that I don't have to tell her, come, we will go out to ride the bicycle. She is there. She will be pulling me to say, come, we will go to the ground to ride the bicycle. Obviously, we couldn't do the bicycling in the apartment building, so we had to go out for her to learn. So the push was from my daughter, was not from me. I didn't have to do anything with the motivation. I didn't have to do absolutely nothing with the enthusiasm. It was all in abundance in the person, but the ability was missing. So what I need to do there was just to help her to learn how to do it, how to bicycle. So that is what we call as D1, where the ability is low, but the commitment is high. We can see this in workplace. There'll be many situations where you give a challenging assignment to somebody, like Dr. Usha Raju mentioned. The person does not have the ability, but this person is aspiring for that role, and therefore the commitment is very high. They will be willing to learn. They will be willing to spend day and night to do well, to read books or learn from others, and that's what happens. So that is the stage which we call D1, which is a member of my team whose ability is low but commitment is high. If we go to the next level, where this person has developed some ability, let me take my example of my own daughter. She now knows how to cycle. She can ride by herself, but then now she is not there waiting at the gate. She's not waking up in the morning anymore. The commitment has gone down. So some ability has come in, but that initial, or sometimes, oh, this is what it is. So the commitment or enthusiasm has gone down. Now it is okay in the case of cycling, but if I want her to become, let's say, a world-class Olympic cyclist, then I need to handle it very differently. Let's say I'm looking at my daughter to become a future Olympic cyclist, a medal winner in cycling, then I need to be doing something. Okay, so this situation where somebody has developed some ability, but there is a drop in commitment, there's a drop in enthusiasm, such cases we call them as D2, development level 2. So we have D1, which is low ability, high commitment. We have D2, where there is some ability, but the commitment has gone down. So yeah, people migrate from D1 to D2. So from a low ability, high commitment, they make the migration over a period of time. After they start learning, speaking some abilities, then probably, is that all this is? So that sets in. Or I'm no longer feeling the challenge because I'm doing some part of it. Or once I get into a project or a field, then it looks good from the outside, but once I get into it, then I realize that there are some challenges. Then I realize that it is not all rosy like I thought from the outside. So we will have situations where the person picks some ability, but then there's a drop in the commitment. So that is development level D2. The third is when somebody has really great ability, high ability, but their commitment is faltering. Sometimes they will do it, sometimes they won't do it. So we will find this even in our workplace. We know that this person is highly capable. His competency, his ability is great. But if I look at his performance, it's very in spurts. So 1 week he will do something extraordinary, but then the next week it drops. So it is the ability is there, but somehow the commitment is faltering. I won't say it is low. It can sometimes become even low if somebody is really pushed into a job. His ability is high, but he doesn't want to do it anymore. He has to be in the job, so he needs the job, so he's there. But what will happen is, in spite of his best competency, because of faltering commitment, the outcomes or the results of the team will start faltering, will keep going up and down. So that's the development level D3. And D4 is somebody with high ability and high commitment. So this is a person everybody would like to have. You would like to have more and more people with this D4 in our teams, people with high ability and high commitment. So more we have people like this in the team, the better the team becomes. The manager becomes redundant. So that is D4, where the commitment is high, ability are high. So if I had to look at the team of Ganguly, I would possibly put Rahul Dravid, Tendulkar, Kumble into this bracket. Extremely talented, and they will be on time. They will come for the net practice every day. Their equipment is ready. They take care of their health. Whether there's a match or no match, they are committed to making sure that they are fit. So you will find that a set of people are like that. So D4 is the ideal situation where somebody's ability is high and his commitment is also high. The role of the manager becomes different. So what we have here is, when we look at our team, we will have people in all these 4 areas: D1, D2, D3, D4. But now something that we should guard against is that I'm not categorizing Mr. X as D1, D2, D3, D4. It is not that Mr. X is D1 or D2 or D3 or D4. If I look at Tendulkar on the cricket field, he was D4. But if he asked Tendulkar to, let's say, be a coach, he might not be D4. We don't know. He has never coached, but I don't know. Possibly he'll be D1 if he has to become a coach. So it is not that Tendulkar is D4. It is not that Mr. X is D1. It is just that Mr. X for a particular task is D1. For another task, so DB, can we move to the next slide? So it is a combination of person and the task. So we could have the same person here. For task 1, he is D1. For another task, he is D4. For a third task, he is D2. For a fourth task, he is D3. And a fifth task is D4. So we will have this combination for everybody. It includes us. I personally am a D4 for something. I am a D1 for something else. I can do some things in somewhere else. So each one of us have this D1, D2, D3, D4 for different tasks. So this is a basic understanding we need to have to follow this style of leadership, where we need to look at people not as excellent guy. So there's nothing called an excellent guy or a poor guy. So it is a combination of that person and the task which makes him excellent, or person and another task which makes him poor. I've kept it a little simple here, but in reality, in today's global world, it is not just person and a task. So I've had cases where I had great project managers. excellent project manager. So he was handling a telecom project and he was fantastic. So I would rate him D4 in project management in that project. Absolutely delight of the customer, and he did great job. But then if I call him an excellent project manager, it would be wrong, because next we moved him from the telecom project to a power project. So and there again he was there as a project manager. He was a project manager in the telecom project. He was D4. He was, because of all that great success of that project, he was moved to a power project where he was there again as project manager, but he struggled there. So it is not just Mr. Sudarshan, project manager is great. It is Mr. Sudarshan, what role it is, and what is the situation around him, which makes him D1, D2, D3, D4. So as managers, what we need to look at is, when we look at our team members and we are being managers to them, we have to look at what is the development level of this person for a particular task and for a given situation. So we need to adopt a leadership style which is different for different development levels. So I need to be a different manager for somebody who's a D1. I need to be a slightly different manager for somebody who's a D2. I need to be a different manager for D3, and I need to be a different manager for D4. So it is not that I can adopt one managerial style or one leadership style with Mr. Sudarshan. I'm just taking a name here. Let's say Sudarshan is my report. So I cannot adopt just one leadership style with my report, Mr. Sudarshan. I need to look at the task that we are sitting together for. And if he's D1, I need to adopt a particular leadership style. If he's D2, I need to be different. If he's D3, I need to be different. And if he's D4 for that particular assignment, task, expertise, then for the same person, I will be a different manager for the 4 different tasks. So this is what we call as situational leadership. It means I don't follow one style of leadership. I look at the situation and then adopt different leadership styles for based on where that candidate is, where my report is, what is his position. If he's a D4 in a particular task, I need to adopt a style. Okay, so any questions at this stage? This is something that we should be very clear to understand this style, which is situational leadership. By the way, this theory was developed by Ken Blanchard. It's called Situational Leadership. There's a book by them. It's quite old, but I think it is. It's going to be valid always. It's called Situational Leadership Theory. Anyone can read. You can. I'm sure soft copies are there on the net. So the first precinct of this theory is that nobody is great and nobody is poor. So when we are looking at our team members, we need to stop saying that somebody is excellent and somebody is poor. It is a combination of the person, the role that is being asked to do, and the situation that he is in makes that person either a D1, D2, D3, D4. Okay, so this is the first thing that we need to have. So yeah, any thoughts at this stage? I would request people to share, and before we move to the next slide. So yeah, thank you, Vidhu Gaur. Thank you for compliment that Deshpande Foundation is doing this. So yeah, it is thanks to people like Gururaj Deshpande, who's been very successful in their entrepreneurship career, and they want to do something back that they drive this philanthropic effort. Yeah, this is growing the country. More successful entrepreneurs are taking to philanthropy. It is good for the country. So thank you, Vidhu. Yeah, any thoughts on the D1, D2, D3, D4? So I want you to think of a D1, a D2, D3, D4 in your teams. You can possibly, we don't need to reveal the names, but if you can share here some person in your team and why do you think that somebody is D1 or D2? So if you can share that, it would be good. It would be for the benefit of everybody. It would help in learning the theory. So yeah, how to handle this, Sudha Reddy, we will come to that. So far we are just building the platform on understanding our team members and be able to lead them according to what is their situation. So the theory is there is no one style of leadership which will work for everybody. We need to diagnose what is the situation development level of a reporting member, and therefore adopt different leadership styles. We'll come to the leadership styles next. So if somebody could share 1 or 2 cases from your own teams, you don't have to reveal the names of somebody who's either a D4 or is somebody who's a D3, where somebody is really committed, but a D3 is somebody who's committed, but his performance keeps faltering. You could unmute and speak as well. So I would request that we make this session a little interactive. So yeah, no issue. So if we look at the cricket team itself, personally I would put a person like Dravid or Tendulkar or Kumble, or for that matter, even Zahir Khan as D4. Extremely committed, extremely talented. You don't have to do much with them. But somebody like a Harbhajan Singh or a Yuvraj Singh would be in D3, supremely talented, absolutely no doubts about their talent, but yeah, their commitment to the game, I'm not saying their commitment to the game is bad, but yeah, they are not as committed to they are not Dravid or they are not Tendulkar. So let me put it that way. I don't want to be judgmental about how they are. So Ganguly had to handle them very differently from the way he handled, let's say, Tendulkar or Dravid. So those would be in the D3. Extremely talented, but they need some supervision. So we'll move to the next slide, DB. So yeah, so now coming to leadership styles. So what situational leadership says is that we need to adopt a leadership style which is based on who are we handling. So are we handling somebody who's a D1, which means his commitment is very high, but his ability is low or competency is low? Then we need to adopt a leadership style called S1. So what is S1 leadership style? S1 leadership style is about directing. The person is committed. We don't have to do much on that. What we need to do is we need to decide for that person, because he doesn't have the ability. We need to give him precise instructions. We need to tell him do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. At step 4, if it is this, then do this. If it is no, then do something else. We need to give step-by-step instructions to this person because he doesn't have the ability. So he will keep learning. He will keep getting better at it. But as long as he is in D1 and his ability is low, we need to be directing this person. We need to make it very clear to them that you don't decide, I'm going to decide. You just do as I say. So that is the directing style or leadership style S1. We don't have to, there's no requirement for motivation, because this person, if you are expecting him to do this job in 3 days, he could even do it in 1 day and come back to you and say, this is already done. So what is required is directing. And many times if the task is sometimes very sensitive or could really impact a project, then it has to be made very clear to this person that he has to do just as I have told you. You will not do anything outside this. It is like saying, don't use your brains, just do as I tell you. So that has to be the style when somebody is in S1. But then S1 is also a leadership style which we may have to use even on an S4 or even on a D4 if we are in a situation of an emergency, or if there is a task which I need to complete by tomorrow evening. Then in that case, even if I am working with a D4, it can be anybody. It can be D1, D2, D3, D4. I will adopt an S1 style because I am answerable, and this has to happen by today evening, or this has to happen by tomorrow evening. So I am going to be telling them, yeah, you're great, but now on this part, just do as I say. So that is leadership style S1, which is very, very high directing and no empowerment. I'm not really looking at motivating somebody. I just want the task to happen. So we may have to use a leadership style S1 even in an emergency situation or when there are time-bound tasks. So S1 leadership style is about guiding people who are low on ability but commitment is high. Okay, so yeah, like rule of thumb. So if we can move to the next DB. So leadership style S2 is for somebody who is in D2. What is D2? A D2 is somebody who has some competency, some abilities, but his confidence is low, his confidence is poor. So this person has he came and joined, he picked some things, he or she had a couple of bad experiences. So let's say there's a person who was joined as a lecturer and came with a lot of enthusiasm and started getting into doing classes. And after the first 10-15 classes, this teacher found that the class was not responding to him or her well, or sometimes the class was indisciplined, did not know how to handle, and therefore there is some despair which is setting in, and the commitment has gone down. So the reality hits people after some time, and therefore the commitment can go low. So people at this stage, which means their abilities are moderate, but their commitment or more enthusiasm, motivation has gone down, are D2. And what the style that we need to adopt with these people is what we call as, we need to be directing plus supervising. We need to be doing both. In S1 style, we didn't need to supervise because the person is highly committed. Whereas in S2, we need to be doing both directing and supervising. We need to create small victories for this person. So as managers, we have it in us to create victories. Sometimes the enthusiasm is low because victories are not happening. So we need to create those victories. And every time there is a victory, we need to celebrate those victories. So what is required here is to build morale. It is about creating that enthusiasm and building morale and creating that commitment, creating that enthusiasm. So very important that possibly we assign a lecturer like this to a class which is probably a little easier to handle rather than assign them something which is very difficult. So as managers, we have that authority. We can actually do a bit of match fixing or game fixing for them so that they experience victory. They see that victory coming, and we make sure that we celebrate those small victories. And therefore, this person's enthusiasm rises up again. So this is style S2, where I am patting the person on the back all the time. I'm saying, yeah, you're doing well. You can do far better. It is not that we are not directing. We are still directing because his ability is not the greatest. His ability is still moderate. We still need to direct. But what is also important is because his enthusiasm has shrunk a bit or gone down totally, we need to be creating that situation where his enthusiasm is back. We need to keep patting on the back. So S2 is a style where I direct, but also keep patting on the back so that this person's enthusiasm fires up again. Okay, so that is leadership style S2, and it is called as coaching, where I work closely with the person, understand, and probably even create those opportunities for victory for the person. That is coaching. So if we could move to the next slide, DB. Yeah. So leadership style S3. So here we have a situation where somebody is having great ability. There is no doubt about the ability or competency of the person, but his commitment is wavering. So that is what we said is D3. So when we are handling somebody who's a D3 in our team, we should adopt a style which is called S3 or supporting. So for a D3, we need a supporting style, which is, first of all, I need to keep expressing that I trust his ability. I don't have any doubt about your ability. You are great, you're extremely talented. But at the same time, I will keep supervising that person. I will keep reviewing. I will keep asking him what happened today, what happened, why didn't this happen, why didn't that happen? That is because his commitment is a little low. And what we need to do is, we need to take responsibility along with him, share responsibility, which means you tell me what is the solution to this. You tell me what should we decide in this situation. I'm not going to decide, I won't decide. So you tell me what we should do and we'll go as per that. So you're telling that person that I trust you, you make the decision and I am with you. So this leadership style is a supporting style wherein even if I have the solution, even if I know what is the answer, I won't decide. I will allow the person to make those decisions, but I am with him saying, we will do it. I am responsible for this. We will do this together. So that is leadership style S3, which is supporting, which is, first of all, trust the ability. Never express any doubt. Let's say there's a situation where something did not happen, something has failed. Understand that it is not because the ability of the person. It is just that he is not there in that task. So we need to get him back into that task. So never get into you are not good at this. He is extremely good at it. It is just that he is not into the task, and we need to bring him back into that task and move him towards S4, which is high ability and high commitment as well. So how can it done is take responsibility. Say you execute, you make the decisions, you solve the problems. If it doesn't work, I'm responsible. So that is a supporting style which we will use with D3. The last style is the easiest style, I would say, but many people find this difficult, is delegating. Working with an S4 is like working with Dravid and Tendulkar. All you have to do is empower them. Assign them challenging tasks with timelines and state what you want from them, and then leave it to them. Zero direction. Don't get into doing minute planning. Don't get into nuts and bolts with them. They are good at it. So trust their ability. Don't go into micromanagement with these people. But what is important here is we need to give them tasks with very clear timelines and what is the expected outcome. They will deliver because their commitment is high, their ability is high. They just need to be told, I want this to happen by end of this week. They will make it happen. So that is leadership style 4, which is about delegating. It is about you having empowered team members. It's a delight to have such team members. But the problem many times we as managers do is we have this tendency to micromanage. So we make the mistake many times of micromanaging even with an S4, even with a D4. We try to work in a different style. We try to tell them do 1, 2, 3, and if this doesn't happen, do that, do this. So he'll be listening to you, but sometimes he'll be laughing because many times your team member's ability could be higher than yours. He's far more superior in that task rather than I am in terms of ability. So my telling to him within his mind, he will be smiling, saying, what is this guy saying? So we'll be demonstrating our ignorance by trying to do, giving them instructions on how to do something. So working with D4 is, the style is delegating. Give them the task, give them timelines, state very clear expected outcomes, and they will come back with you. But then what we need to do with S4 is also to keep challenging them. because these people have to be challenged. Otherwise, doing the same thing every day just because they are good at it and they are motivated, if we fail to challenge them, they will move to S3. They will move to D3. If we go back to the earlier slides, DB, if you can go back where we had the development levels, still a couple of slides before, where we had the development levels. One more slide back. So if you see the D3 to D4 is a normal transition, but then it is also possible that somebody will switch back to D3 from D4 because he's not being challenged. You are giving this person, extremely talented, extremely committed person, mundane tasks that he is able to do with just like that. So what is bound to happen is over a period of time, his commitment could start faltering. So people in D3 many times who were in D4 earlier and have now come back to D3 because as managers, we have failed them. So keeping D3, keeping a D4 is not easy. While it's a delight to have these members in the team, they are also a challenge, because unless we keep feeding them challenges, they will slip out of D4 and they could very easily go to D3. And if this happens a few times, then it is very likely that this person will no longer be in your team. So a few times D4, D3, D4, D3, and after that, he's going to say, no, this is not the place where I want to be. So very important to have challenging assignments for people who are in D4. Keep challenging them so that they stay in D4. And one of the best things to do is, if somebody is in D4, align people who are in D1 or D2. So you align them saying, I am delegating my responsibility to you. So I have this new member in our team who's a D1 and he needs to be brought up to speed. So why don't you be his coach, or why don't you be his mentor in my team? Why don't you make sure that his competency gets better? I will pair a D4 with a D1. It becomes a challenge. It's a recognition for D4. And he accepts the challenge and he stays in D4 rather than let his commitment go low. He realizes that his position in D4 is being acknowledged and he commits to stay in D4. So yeah, DB, we can go back to that S4 slide. So yeah, so important here in handling D4s is not to micromanage, empower them and acknowledge them by giving them higher responsibilities. So motivation, to continue motivation for these D4s as an S4, I need to assign them higher responsibilities. So so that is the 4 styles of leadership. Directing, which is just do as I tell you. It might sound a little autocratic, but that is how you have to deal with somebody who's low on ability but high on commitment. So that's directing. Coaching is when somebody has some competency but his motivation is poor. We need to create victories for this person. We need to spend time with this person, get him up to speed on his motivation, and therefore his competency will also move higher and he will start moving to S3. So so that is the S2 style, which we will use with D2. S3 is where I have somebody who's supremely talented, but his commitment is wavering. So with such candidates, I need to be telling them, you are excellent, I don't doubt your ability, but then I am with you. We will do this together. You decide. We will jointly make that decision. You tell me what is the right way out. We will jointly do that. So that is supporting style, which is S3. And leadership style S4 is where I empower, I delegate, and I challenge people who are in development level D4. So these are the 4 leadership styles. And the prescription is that as managers, we need to first of all diagnose where are our team members for a given task, for a given situation. Are they in D1, D2, D3, D4? And I, as a manager, I need to be flexible to switch from D1 to S1 to S2 to S3 to S4. It means that I am in one meeting with my report. I'm in a directing style. My next meeting, I'm with another report, and there I'm in an empowerment. I'm just telling him, this is what you have to do. This is the timeline. This is what I want you to finish. And that's it. I'll expect you to give me this by the end of next week. So I am adopting different styles with different people. All of us do this in our day-to-day life, but the Ken Blanchard model is actually giving us a good structure to understand this style of working or adopting a different style to different situations. It's called situational leadership, where we have 4 levels of development of our team members: D1, D2, D3, D4. And I, as a leader, I need to adopt a matching style of leadership with my team members, which is S1, directing, S2, coaching, S3, supporting, and S4, which is delegating and empowering. So, so these are the 4 styles. Any questions so far? So yeah, Vidhu, should we teach or train leadership in classrooms, or people are leaders by themselves, or simply categorize them as D1, D2, etc. to understand their personalities? No, this is Vidhu, this is not about personality. This is not about the person at all. It is about his competence and his commitment. So commitment is a thing in the mind. So I have likes and dislikes. I am interested in something, I'm not interested in something else. So building that motivation in team members for things is role of the manager. So it is not about personality. So we will move to the next slide. So and there's one more question. Should we teach or train leadership in classrooms? Yes, leaders develop by experience. So let me be very honest. Leadership is developed by experience, but in a classroom, if we can give people a structure based on experience of the people who are in that roles earlier. So people who are in leadership roles have experienced it and learned it without any template or without any structure. And based on their experience, they have created a structure to leadership. There's no reason why it will not help another person reach the same level of competency as a leader in a much shorter time. So leadership is built by experience, Vidhu, but then that process can be fastened or hastened by talking to people in classrooms on what they could be doing, what are the frameworks that they could adopt for picking things. It becomes much easier. So the way I think, the way I lead, I now suddenly see, wow, this is how it is. So it makes things much simpler if there are frameworks like this for leadership. So personally, I found this very, very useful. And I myself would, because this became a style of, this became a framework that we adopted in the organization where I worked. So even between me and my manager, when we would sit and discuss many times, I would tell my manager, Vivek, sorry, in this I am a D1. So there's nothing wrong in somebody being a D1 or a D4. It's not that. It is just that when somebody is assigning me a task, both of us understand that I am D1 and therefore he needs to adopt a certain leadership style with me. So both of us understood that, both as manager and his report, we understood this, and it worked beautifully. So he knew that this is how he has to work. So there'll be more frequent reviews. There'll be somebody to guide me. So there would be an D4 who would be helping me out on that. So it would help. Okay, now when it comes to the mistakes that happen when it comes to leadership styles, is that many people tend to use only one style of leadership, unitary style of leadership. So we don't understand this S1, D1, D2, D3, D4. I think the only way of doing is I will tell you what to do and you just do as I'm telling you. So these are people, many people follow this single style of leadership. So they will follow an S1 style, which is highly directing. I will tell you what to do. I will micromanage. I will tell you what to do. And you just do as I tell you. So that is using a leadership S1, with somebody who's D4. It can be very, very disturbing for this person who's D4. If I had to give you an example, it is like I'm great at driving my car. I'm driving my car and I have somebody sitting next to me and telling me, I change to third gear, go to the left. Why are you driving in the middle of the road? Why are you speeding? Why are you using the clutch? Why are you braking so much? So it would be like that. So I know driving well. I am committed to that zero accident person. But then if somebody is sitting next to me and telling me micromanaging what I should do, you could understand what would happen to your reporting team member. They won't stay with you for long unless they don't have options. Otherwise, they won't stay with you for long. So using an S1 with a D4 is such a mismatch. Or somebody who is totally thinks that somebody is in my team, I will give him a task and he has to do it. I will tell him that you have to finish this by next week, and I'm not bothered about what you are, and I'm going to say you do it and come and give it to me next week. That is, I'm using an S4 style, which I should be using with a D4. I'm using it with a D2 or a D1. Now D2 or a D1, unless they are guided, unless they are given some directions, they will fail. So using an S4 style with somebody who's a D2 or a D1 is again a recipe for disaster for the team, because what is going to happen is by next week, there'll be no output, because this person was a D2, his commitment is low, his competency is not the greatest, and I am handling him like he's a D4. So again, it's a disaster. So if we start adopting styles which are a mismatch, it would end in a disaster. It would end in a disaster either for that person who will get frustrated, or my team will not be performing, therefore I will look as a poor leader. So what is important is not be unitary in our leadership style. We need to adopt, understand, diagnose where are our reports for a particular task, for a particular situation, and I need to be flexible to change my leadership style which would suit them. That is what will work. That's when we will have what you can call as a gung-ho team, which means a team which understands, which performs, which delivers results. There's a good understanding between the manager and the team members, the leader and the team members. That's when it works harmoniously, because I am adopting a tool which is most suited for the person that I'm handling. So 4 styles of leadership: S1, S2, S3, S4. S1 is directing, S2 is coaching, S3 is supporting, and S4 is delegating and empowering. So this is what I have to share. Any questions? DB, can move to the next slide. Any questions? I'll be most glad to try and answer to the best of my ability. So yeah, thank you, Prakash, Aprameya, Vidhu, and Pranesh. So any questions that I can clarify, or anything that you have to share either from your own personal life? I'm sure all of you at some stage in your career have experienced great managers. So you can tell us why you thought that manager was so inspirational for you. Or in your own case as a manager, if you've had some situation where things worked or things failed, we can listen to that. What's the difference between coaching and supervising? Okay, a coach is somebody who's not just telling you what to do. A coach is with you. Okay, so here when we say coach, we are not talking of the personal coaches, but here as a manager, I am with the person. I am many times creating these victories for him. Why is this lecturer struggling? Why is this person who came here with so much enthusiasm now his head is down? So it is important that we create these victories. People develop confidence with victories. So if somebody is having consistent failures, you can imagine what happens to their morale. So as managers, it is important for us to create these victories. So here, when I say coaching, I'm talking of working closely with the person. I have given him tasks. I'm telling him to do 1, 2, 3, 4. But after that, I'm also sometimes watching him. Or if it's a lecturer, I am possibly going and sitting in his class and telling him what works, what doesn't work, what he should change. So I'm doing both directing, and I'm creating victories for him. I'm patting his back, and therefore bringing him, pushing him towards bettering his abilities and moving towards S3 or S4. It is not necessary that somebody has to go from D2 to D3. There are cases where people who are in D2 move directly to D4. Or it's also possible that somebody who is in D1 without much of this thing could very quickly transition from D2 to D3 to D4. So you will find all these examples in your experience. At least I have experienced this. But I thought this is a good framework for us to adopt and be good leaders for our team members. So this is largely about managing others. So I have to lead my team members. So this, I thought, in my personal experience, was a good framework for me to look at my team members and say, how should I behave with them? What should be my leadership style with them? So yeah, for further reading, you can look up for the book by Paul Hershey, which is the Situation Leader. This theory was proposed by both Dr. Paul Hershey and Ken Blanchard. This book is available. There's a lot of reading material on the net. So Modi ji entered assembly without any prior experience of government, similar to PM-ship, without any. What type of leadership is this? Okay, so he was okay. Now that's the leading self. So Modi ji is somebody who's great at leading self. So if you ask me, he never came into either of these roles saying, I know everything. What did he do? He picked the best of people around. You look at the people he picked to head his office. He pulled them out of retirement from somewhere, people with whom he had great trust. He knew what he can do. He also knew that he won't be able to handle many things. He created a team around him which would complement him. So the great thing about Modi ji possibly is that his leading self is great, and yeah, he was able to inspire. He created a great team around him, and that is his key to success. It is seen that many are reluctant in appreciating others. What may be the reason? Satishan, as leaders, this is our task. We would have heard many times. The best example I give is of APJ Kalam talking about Satish Dhawan or Vikram Sarabhai when the missile launch failed, and his head at the time, I think it was Vikram Sarabhai, or rather Satish Dhawan, who met the press and took the failure on himself. But when the next launch, everything worked, he asked APG to go and meet the press. I think appreciating others and taking blame is very, very critical to be a good leader. All credit for success to the team, and if something fails, I will take the brunt. We see this even with Dhoni. Every time he's won the tournament and the cup is there, you never see his pictures holding the cup. He just receives the cup, and then all the images are with others. So you will never see him holding the cup. So all signs of great leadership, take the flak and leave the credit for team members is sign of great leadership. Dr. Govind Kumar, why not Govind Kumar? So there is no reason why we should approach the best people for any situation. If Dr. Manmohan Singh is the best person to advise Modi on what should happen now, there's no reason why he shouldn't do it. But yeah, at the national level, when it comes to governing the country, it is not just the government. There's another element involved, which is competitive politics. But I only wish that sometimes we rise above that and pick who is the best.
Hello, Namaste sir. This is from my call.
Yeah, Aprameya, your voice is cracking. I'm not able to hear you well. No, we're not able to hear you, Aprameya. If you could type your question, then probably we could pick that. Yeah, or if somebody else heard Aprameya, you could type. Yeah, Harish.
Even I'm not getting his
Okay,
voice
okay,
properly,
okay.
sir.
So yeah, Harish, I think I'm finishing on time, 1:30.
You're great, sir. I mean, the content was really great, and time management, everything was great. Dear participants, would you like to interact with sir? You're free to do so. It's a great opportunity, I can say. Speaking to CEOs, chief operating officers, president of a company, I can say that our FDP has provided you lots of opportunities in that sense. In the first session, we got to have an opportunity to interact with the CEO of Deshpande India. Now we are talking to COO, sir. Sir, I want to thank DB sir for accepting my, mail, first of all. And I was in touch with him from past 2 months in deciding the topics. When I proposed him lot many topics, he said, "You're coming up with great topics, but I doubt how to manage with the time and all." Anyway, we came up with good topics, and your support and the entire Deshpande Foundation. My intention is, sir, not to stay at this point of time. I want to get engaged with your foundation for next level. I want to take it to the next level. Maybe that would be the next assignment for me. I'll take up personally. I want to take it up. Thanks for your guidance, suggestions, and for accepting our invitation. And on behalf of Government Polytechnic Harapanalli, on behalf of staff, colleagues, and principal, and on behalf of all the participants, I would like to thank you for your valuable time. I'm sorry that I forgot to mention that you are the proud alumni of NIT Surathkal, NITK Surathkal, and Xavier School of Management, Jamshedpur. And having vast experience of for 27 years at HCL Infotech, and your engagement with various NGOs across the country, and now you are leading Deshpande Foundation as a COO. I think it's a proud moment for us to have you on this platform. I'm so grateful to you, sir, for providing your valuable time for us. I hope we'll continue and we'll work together in the coming days. I'll take it to the next level. I'm sure that I'll take it to the next sessions, the next steps, sir.
So yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you for your patience. And so yeah, here at the foundation, our objective is rural transformation. And if we really want that to happen, I think the youth who form such a large part of the population of the rural India, we need to create opportunity for them to be productive for the country, productive for their families. So while each one of you in your polytechnics are contributing to that, we are also doing our bit and trying to see how can we get as many people into good roles and creating that opportunity for them to contribute. It's about nation building. How can they contribute to the nation, and also in the process, they're also creating that change to their family. So when we are working with people at the bottom of the pyramid, when they get to good earning positions, it makes a big difference to their families, to their siblings, to other members of family. And our model of social impact is economic. So Mr. Gurrat Deshpande, who's our founder, very clearly states that India is a country of 1.3 billion population. The top 200 million have access to what he calls as disposable income, and therefore all their problems are solved because there are so many people who are willing to solve their problems, and there's money to be made. But the bottom 1.1 billion, where the disposable income is small or limited or not there at all, their problems hardly get solved because there is no money to be made. So all our programs at the foundation are targeted towards the bottom 1.1 billion. And one way of doing that is to get youth from this section to get into productive earning jobs. So we'll be glad to work with the polytechnics, because especially polytechnics which are there in rural area, which largely admits students from rural part of the country. So we'll be glad to work with you. So thank you everybody, and thank you Harish sir.
Sir, thank you so much. Thanks for your words, and we'll definitely come back to you on behalf of our institution, sir.
Thank you everybody. Thank you for your patience. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And dear participants, thanks for your active participation. Hope you have enjoyed the session, and go for a lunch and have a nice lunch, take a break, and join us for the one last session at 2:30. Soon after that, we'll have valedictory function. For the valedictory function, we will be joined by our Honorable Joint Director, Administration, Shri R. Manjunath sir. Sir, request to Deshpande Foundation, people from Deshpande Foundation, if it is really possible, if you find it convenient, would you be able to join us for the valedictory session at 4, sir?
What time is this, Harisha?
At 4, sir, at sharp 4.
Let me just check. I'll confirm
Yeah,
through DB. So yeah.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
Because I feel that your presence would matter a
So
lot.
we'll let me just check. Let me just check my calendar. Yeah. If I can make it possible, I'll definitely be there, Harisha. Yeah?
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Thank you. all.
Thank you. Thank you.